I said at the end of the first Solving Quadratic Equations video that I was going to leave example 3 to you to do. And while I'm not going to go through all of example 3 in this video, I would like to go through and get at least one of the solutions because I have a comment or two to make about it. So if we go through the same process we've been going through, we're going to take and graph the left-hand side of the equation and also at the same time graph the right-hand side of the equation, and we'll look for the intersections. And the x values at those intersections are the solutions to this equation. So we'll start on the calculator by going to the y equals menu. And the first thing I'm going to do is clear out the expressions we have from example 2. So I'm going to press the clear button. While I'm flashing here at y1, I'm going to press the cursor down key. And I'm going to press clear on y2. And then I'll go back up to y1 and I'll enter in the left side of the equation, which is in this case 2x squared. And once we have that in here, we can press enter, and then we can see about putting the right hand side of the equation, 8x minus 3, into y2. So I'm going to type in 8x minus 3, and I'll press enter to put that in. I'm going to start by graphing in the standard window again, so I'm going to press zoom and 6. It just seems to, in a lot of cases, be a good place to start from. Not for all equations, but in this case, and as we saw in example 2, it showed us a bit of the graph, gave us an idea of where the intersections were, and we could go from there. So here's the 2x squared part coming up on my calculator screen. And in a moment here, we should get the 8x minus 3 part. And it looks like our intersections are going to be up here in the first quadrant. We have one very close to the origin, and we have another one that's a little bit higher up. So if we reset our window, we don't really need to see anything left of the y-axis. We could set x-min to 0, and if we used maybe 3 or 4, again, we should be able to see more than far enough to the right to see that intersection. Both intersections are above the x-axis, so we could set y-min to 0. And we're going to need to make y-max bigger than the 10 it is right now so we can see that intersection. 15 or 20 would be a good place to start. So let's go into Window, and let's set x-min to 0 because we don't need to see left of the y-axis. And I'm going to set x-max to 4. Make sure I can see things clearly. I'm going to leave x scale at 1. X-min, I'm also going to make 0 since we don't need to see below the x-axis. And y-max, I'm going to run it up to 20 just to make sure that I can see things that are there. Alright, once I've made those adjustments to my window, then I can press the graph key and the calculator will regraph the equation in our new window. So here it is once again graphing the 2x squared part of the equation first. And once it has the 2x squared part of the equation graphed, then it'll start working on the 8x minus 3 part. And what we see here in those choices of window is we can see one intersection, but we can't see a lot of it. And the other intersection is actually still off the screen here. So let's extend our window down a little bit so we have a little bit more room around this intersection that's down here very close to the x-axis. And let's also make y-max a little bit bigger so we can get to see this other intersection up here. So let's go back to Window, and I'm going to press enter or just cursor down to y-min. And I'm going to say let's go to -5. Give us a little more room to see things there. And press enter. And I'm going to take y-max, I'm going to guess 30 this time. It might be a little too much, but we'll see what happens. So I'll type in 30, press enter, and we'll regraph again. Picking the appropriate window is one of the skills that you kind of develop once you've been graphing with the calculator for a while. It's not the easiest thing to do. It often takes a couple of guesses to get it right, but it is important that you get it right and you can see everything that you need to see. All right, so there we can see that first intersection a little bit better, have a little bit more room to the left and the right of it for our left bound and our right bound. And we can also see the intersection in the upper right hand corner of the screen. It looks like we have enough room to move around that as well. Set left bounds and right bounds if we need to, do whatever is appropriate. Now I'm just going to find one of these two intersections. So I'm going to work on the intersection that's in the lower left corner. To find an intersection, we press second and the trace key to get to that calc menu. And we choose option 5, intersection. And when we get back here, we're being asked what is the first curve. So what's one of the two curves that we want to find the intersection of? Right now we're on y1 equals 2x squared. That's one of them. So I'll press enter. And there's a plus that gets put on that to say that's one of the curves we're working on. It asks us for the second curve, and it jumped to y2 is equal to 8x minus 3. That's exactly the other curve that we want. So we'll press enter. And that's our two curves. Now we need to make a guess. So I need to move that cursor down closer to where the intersection really is. So we'll move down in that general direction. And you'll notice that it's kind of obscured by the word guess, so we'll just kind of have to guess a little bit as to when we get close. But we know it's pretty close to the x-axis. So one thing we could do, since we know that, is we could be watching the y-coordinate here and looking for it to get close to 0, even though I can't necessarily see what's going on when I get down there, because we're pretty sure that y is pretty close to 0 at that point. So that's awfully close to 0 right there, y 0.063 and a bit. So I'm going to choose that as my guess. I'm going to press enter, let the calculator work. And the calculator comes back and gives me an intersection at 0.4188617 for the x value, and that's the value that we're really interested in. I don't see anything repeating there, so it looks like if it will convert back to a fraction, it's a somewhat complicated fraction. Let's quit out of this screen, pressing second in mode, and then let's take a look at that value of x, and let's see if we can convert it to a fraction. So we're going to press our variable key here to get x. I'm going to press the math key and choose option 1 to convert to a fraction, and I'm going to press enter. And you'll notice that it gives me a decimal back. That means the calculator was unable to convert that back to a fraction, which either means that it's such a complex fraction that the calculator is having difficulty with it, or that the answer is an irrational number. And irrational numbers come up quite a bit in the answers to quadratic equations. You'll have an irrational answer anytime that you have a square root left over that you can't simplify. As a matter of fact, this equation, if you ran it through the quadratic formula, would have exactly that. You'd end up with the square root of 10 left over in your answer once it was simplified. When this happens and you're unable to convert an answer back to a fraction, thereby indicating that you most likely have an irrational solution, it is best for you to go to pencil and paper, use the quadratic formula, and find the exact answer. Typically when we solve quadratic equations, we want exact answers. And the calculator can't always do that for us. Technology always has its limitations, and this is one important example thereof.